I've always gotten a kick out of genius. The word he's a literary genius. He's a financial genius. There's no such thing except a mathematical or scientific genius. That's it. Or medical genius, a doctor, a surgeon genius. There's no such thing as a literary genius. That's just somebody who read a lot and probably didn't get outside too much, didn't play a lot of ball. I'm going to do a book review for a colleague and a friend of mine. Her name's Rachel Wilson. Some of you guys know her and her husband, Andrew, homeschooling, nuclear family, everything, the true rebels of society. And she wrote a book called Occult Feminism, The Secret History of Women's Liberation about a year ago or so. And I guess she got on with Tucker Carlson. So that kind of made the rounds. And what little drip of water into the pool I add here with a co-promotion of it, I'll do here. But I'll tell you this, it is a really invaluable book. I don't say it because she's a friend or because I have a lot of complaints about it too. But this is exactly the type of book we need, where you take the sheen off of, what feminists have talked about their own history and how they portray the plight of women. It's really interesting what she did in terms of research, where she goes back and looks at the origins of feminism. That was her original intention in this book, was like, well, what are the origins of feminism, particularly here in the United States? Which changed kind of the title of her book to where she found, oh, there's like a lot of occult stuff going on, which I kind of disagree with the premise of the book, or at least the title. But I can understand why she went with it. But I'm more fascinated, and you'll see why when I'll go over it here when I think of the book. But just the behaviors of some of these despicable people, and some common refrains I have about modern day people, namely trust fund babies and rich people who are bored with their lives and think they're going to lecture and lord over everyone else. Those are, you got to look out for the trust fund babies. And yeah, a lot of money. It is especially back in the olden days, it was a luxury to pursue these pursuits and set up utopian societies. Like, where'd the money come from? Oh, she married a rich guy, huh? What are the chances? So I'll read the title here, give you a little bit of background. Occult Feminism, The Secret History of Women's Liberation. Occult Feminism, The Secret History of Women's Liberation dives deep into the occult roots, which I disagree with, of the movement, detailing the lives of some of its most prominent figures and their esoteric beliefs. That's a euphemism. 2 50-cent words in a shot there. That inspired and motivated them. Since the 1970s, everything we learned about the issue of women's movement has been subject to gatekeeping by radicals who run women's studies departments and universities. Oh, it's been totally whitewashed. Totally whitewashed. I mean, if we're going to go back, oh, did you know the founding fathers had affairs or slaves or something like that? It's macabre, the background of this has nothing to do with the occult. So we have every right to go back and look at these founding women. And mentally ill. And I admit, she didn't go through all of them. She went through the ones that had some kind of toehold or toe in the occult, or at least pagan or non-Christian religions. And so you get the idea there. I linked to it below. You could buy. I do recommend buying it. I recommend holding on to a physical copy of it because we're constantly revising history. And I was very impressed with the research she did. All right, so by indicating the indication of the title, you would think that feminism was derived from the occult. And in fairness to Rachel, when she writes it, she defines the occult as generally, though not specifically, outside of Christianity. She's religious, but for definition's sake, she says, okay, it's anything outside of Christianity. You say, well, that's a pretty broad brush. Like, is Islam or Judaism part of the occult? Keep in mind, this is in the context of U.S. history and also from her religious beliefs. And that starting from the colonies founded by Protestant people trying to get away from the murdering Catholics, it is in it is in relation to a society that was largely Christian, or if not totally Christian. And so the way she structures the book is chronological, which I appreciate because you could see how you would think or how feminism has occultish ties, but it is more how did religion evolve in the United States and in relation to Christianity, how then feminism would form in that environment. If that makes sense. It's kind of a little bit larger of a topic to grasp, but I don't think she necessarily set out to do it, but in putting it chronologically, you see like, okay, step one, ingredient one, Christianity. All right. And then all these different revolutions and movements that happened that derive from Christianity. And because they weren't canon, they weren't kosher Christianity, actually authentic Christianity, but derivations and actual cults. That's where she defines it as occult. So that certainly includes paganism, Wicca, witchcraft, all the other different like things that you would stereotypically, but it also could probably like the Methodists now, I guess, would be considered that because then they just come out, or the Unitarians, like so long dead branches of Christianity that have occurred. And so as religion evolved in the United States and more branches of Christianity that were not branches, but actual cults, and some of which ended up becoming actual satanic or Wiccan. And you have to understand that in secular or cult non-Christian views, the devil is not the bad guy, God is. And you got to keep in mind, every individual person had we're talking hundreds of derivations. We're talking hundreds of cult leaders. So in their warped minds, like, but the Christian church was bad because it didn't allow women and it was patriarchy. So, in a lot of these views, the devil is the liberator. And so that's kind of how can we put it? As religion became more and more warped from a pure Christian view, authentic Christian view, these sub-religions and derivations were perverted, some of which become genuine cults, some occult, including Wiccan and witchcraft. And within that environment, a lot of women, feminists rather, rose to prominence. So it was kind of these cults would form, women would glom onto it. One of the things these various and different and very diversified derivations of Christianity would be women's rights, the elimination of the nuclear family, communal raising of children, and socialism across all of them. Always never having to work. And another funny thing is an aside, but then I'll get to kind of the takeaway from it. They all try to form communities like utopian communities, and they all failed. All failed. So here's basically what my take is. It's a great book for historical documentation purposes. It highlights some of these saints within the feminist movements. It's like, hey, these are not good people, and they're mentally ill. A lot of suicide going on in them. And whereas her premise is that feminism has its roots, it's in the subtitle, in the occult, I disagree. Because what I think happened here is it was the perfect storm of various sociological ingredients and time and economic things going on, where it created an environment for a political ideology like feminism to form. And also because of some key players, also key ingredients to this perfect storm, made it into a cogent, solidified political movement, especially in the 20th century, if you want to, which I think she did a brilliant job starting. I think she goes all the way back to like not prehistoric religions, but earliest religions. And that's where one of the picture of that is a feminist goddess Kali, and she kills men. Oh, yeah. They hate men. I know not all feminists hate. I know. But man, you might want to look into your ranks and your founding mothers. There are some genuine misandrists in that group. All right, so here is what I think happened. I don't think feminism had its roots in witchcraft and the occult and Wiccanism. But here are the ingredients that form the perfect storm so you could see where feminism would flourish in an environment like this. All right. First, we have the Christian background. All right. And the Christian background, at least in the United States, was universal. Like you were a Christian, you had to be Christian. And if not, oh, well, you're going to burn in hell and all that other stuff. So everything in society had to be in relation to that. You couldn't just like, screw Christianity, I'm out of here. You'd be ostracized from the village and all that. So what you would have to do then is you would have to take a perverted view of the religion or a new view or a branch out, like the Martin Luther did with the Catholics. You'd have to leave the religion, but still claim to be a Christian. Not to mention there'd be many social life supporting benefits that came with maintaining your Christianity. So you had to have a variation of Christianity come out of that. And then there's all these different movements. I didn't keep track of all of them, but going back to the colonial days, what was it? The Quakers and things like that. And kind of in a Wyoming granting women the right to vote because the men there wanted to get laid. You see a lot of these going back to the 1800s, like where I think the Quakers were the first ones to give women voting rights or something like that, or to be part of leaders of the church and stuff like that. So you start to see a lot of people saying, I disagree with the church. I'm going to do my own thing. And 9 times out of 10, it wasn't like you were Martin Luther and you had a real problem with the corruption of the papacy and all the BS rules and Catholic indulgences or the corruption within the Catholic Church. Every time it was, I want to bang other women and I don't like the rules and the laws. And there's stories rife going back to the olden times, but not too long ago, maybe 100 years ago, where they're getting arrested for pedophilia, and these are guys who founding these break off cults, and they're going to form a commune, and always it was socialism, always like, oh, there's no property ownership, including your wives, and the free love movement is in here and all that other stuff. So it wasn't like there was serious scholarly religious concerns about flaws within Christianity or how it was being preached. It was somebody wanted to cheat the rules, but still be Christian, and you see that now where it's like, and I'm for gay rights. I'm for gay pastors. Just the contradiction is, well, then I don't know how you can be Christian if you're allowing gay pastors, even female pastors. Again, I'm all for female pastors, but kind of was pretty clear in many variations of Christianity long before that's against the rules. And so there seems to be this, you still want to have the religion, but you want to have your cake and eat it too, and you want to sin, or at least go outside of the rules and the guideline. Maybe not fully sin, but you want to break out of the rules and the guidelines. All right. Related to that is another aspect of human psychology or the human spirit of human being. And that is, I think humans need a religion. Now, I'm not saying one of the Abrahamic religions. I'm not saying necessarily one of the Eastern religions, though Buddhism is high, Indian, Eastern Indian, American Indian too, but heavily influenced. Well, I'm going to be a Buddhist. You wondering where that and yoga comes? It comes from 100, 150 years ago, where women just, I don't know why, but they had a preference for Buddhism. I'm not talking one of those necessary religions, but you need to believe in something. One, to quell your concern about your mortality, and hopefully there's an afterlife if you want to believe in that. But I also think that you need something beyond just food, clothing, and shelter to live. I mean, if that's your primary problems facing you, you don't have time to think of lofty things like religion or family. But if you get to that point, you get to a stable place, which a lot of these people were, because the women were rich, or they married rich and they were taken care of. And like rich people, they just get ideas. So you also need to find a purpose and reason. You see that a lot of things back in the olden times are happening very clearly, exactly happening today. So you're a rich person in the suburbs or whatever, and and then you discover Baha'i because I don't know, it pisses off dad or who knows. But there is a real concrete, I think, for vice and for religion, because you have to believe in something. Otherwise, you're like, well, why am I here? And then you get an existential crisis, you get depressed. That's not necessarily wrong. I don't necessarily believe in human. Now we come into the sins, and there's a parallel, some wisdom you see with the 7 deadly sins. Laziness. None of these variations or deviations from Christianity, none of them require hard work, sacrifice, self-partake. It was all free love and socialism, and everything's and that's another aspect of humanity that you saw consistently throughout this was human laziness. No one wanted to do any work. No one wanted to say, well, what makes a good person? Well, usually becoming of value to the rest of society. So you have to become something of value. But nearly everyone cited in this book, going back to several hundred years ago, philosophers, oh my God, pretty much starting once the printing press started, all these people did was write magazines and pamphlets and news articles and books. I'm like, well, and we're talking like 1870s. I'm like, don't you all got a farm or something? Don't you all got to be rebuilding the South? Where do you get these, like, to just, oh, well, she was married to literally, one gal was married to actually several were married to congressmen, paramours, but there's no one saying, like, and we find salvation through barn raising and raising lots of stock and being Amish. It was all hippy-dippy, work-avoidant BS. And so that innate human laziness and I would say stupidity to think it's possible. Everyone's lazy. Everyone's lazy. It's whether you're smart enough to realize, well, we better work anyway because starving sucks. So there's that. Then there's human ego. Pride, I guess, would be the other one. Where simply being a mother or a housewife was not enough. And sometimes to psychopathic levels, I must be a goddess. I'm going to I'm going to transform beyond my human body, and the great God spirit spoke to me. All this wooey wowie woo chakra crystal BS hundreds of years ago. And when also tied to, now going back in fairness, a lot of these in the early settling times, colonial times, a lot of these cults were started off by guys. Why? Because they wanted to be the leader. They wanted to be the one. They wanted to guide their flock. And so you just can't, it's one thing, all right, I believe in this, I'll be quiet about it. Nope, they had to like spread it, or they had to be the leader. They had to go and do their commune. There'd be a ton of infighting. Both men and women on this, by the way, especially when it came to their communes. But they couldn't just, hey, be a penitent Christian or Jew or Muslim, whatever. Nope, they had to be special. They had to have their own religion and come up with this huge parallel. I would say there's more of a tie to this wooey wowie BS, this cultish, we know better, and what was it? The theory, going beyond and talking to spirits and spirit guides and all this other stuff. That is more closely deriving of today's modern academia, where they make up complete BS and treat it like a legitimate study. This was their precursors. This was the prototype of your modern day social science and liberal arts programs and departments. More of a closer relation to that and a cause effect than this being the roots of feminism. All right. So there's that. And then I would also say wealthy benefactor. I'm going to call it the Bill Burr effect. No one corrects them because we want to F them. These women had pussy. And so what you would have is there was always a rich guy, very often sexually motivated or involved for the pussy, but also, and I'll tell you the final ingredient of the economic storm that formed here. Also, this you had a lot of captains of industry era, and it was chic. It was fashionable to have mystic tellers and spiritual advisors, invariably women, invariably charlatans, literal snake oil salesmen. She goes through a couple families that would travel the West and then escape to Canada when they were found out. Something happens when you get stupid when you get a lot of money. Like, go look at Mark Dayton. I mean, a truly stupid man. Unearned money, by the way. The Rockefellers, all these big, not necessarily the barons of industry themselves, though I think Vanderbilt was one of them, but their children and the nonprofits they set up and all this other stuff. It was incestuous. Dude, the fact these girls had a hoo-ha meant they got funded either by the guy himself or their grandsons or grandchildren or sons who wanted to get laid. And they would, like Elon Musk was chasing after Amber Heard. What the hell's wrong with you? I understand. You're really good at Sparky cards. You're not that good with women. And always, I'll fund your writing. I'll fund your newspaper. And then, very interesting, maybe a second, I'll give you the other economic thing going on. What would end up happening, it happened multiple times, is, okay, you got the captains of industry, right? Well, what happens? Well, they inevitably die. Who outlives them? Their wives? What do the wives do with the money? They Mackenzie Bezos it up. Here's money for a feminist cause, and here's money for a feminist cause. Like Oprah, I'll give her legit credit. She earned it herself. And then she funded all the feminist causes. All these old widows who just took the money and like, I'm going to help out those women. This can't possibly hurt. And so they were heavily funded, certainly at and after the Industrial Revolution. And then finally, also related to that, is this is roughly coming in after the Agricultural Revolution. And by that, I mean like cotton gin, farming techniques, and the Industrial Revolution, where you had a group of people who had the money, or at least the food. They were outside of Maslow's first basic couple of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if you're a pretty young thing and you were said, ooh, you talk to the spirits. Oh, and all of them got busted for fraud. They all got proven to be fraudulent. You could sell yourself to some pretty rich dudes. If you were pretty, they'd indulge you. Oh, yeah, the occult, sure. Ooh, you're going to tell my fortune? You read my palm? Now, that wasn't feminism. That was just a con job. But she connects Rachel, the author. Should I say authoress to piss off everyone, but she won't be offended? Rachel, the authoress, connected the various movements starting in the colonial times to how it had an influence, like theosophy. There was a connection where, okay, you're talking about Christianity. Now you're talking about God. Now you're talking about gods and spirits. And now you're in the spiritual world. So there was always this little bit of a toe. Really? Not now. There was always a little bit of a toe in Christianity, even so far as to be anti-Christian and cheer on Lucifer because Christianity was anti-female, because Eve was screwed and cheated or whatever else like that. Shoot, where was I going with that? But that is where you would see it took a while for what we define as the occult to form into its modern self, but it had its origins deriving from Christianity, being masticated and chewed up and spit out through all these different movements, all of which were excuses not to work, which goes back to the human nature element of being egotistical and lazy. And women just said, I got hoo-ha. And it was and then you throw in the economic revolution and rich benefactors and the widow effect and all that. You could see where feminism would grow rife in that type of environment, or at least many, what's the gal who wrote The Feminine Mystique? She was not an occultist. She never did the woo-wee, wah-wee, woo-wee thing. So there are secular, non-witchcraft, non-Christian feminists. There's some that came legitimately through, say, genuine feminist philosophical lack of thought. But you could see where that's the perfect environment. It's dark, it's cool, it's wet. Oh my God, mold grows here. And it's not that, what would I say, that it's, that mold has its origins in basements. It's all the conditions that formed that the spore itself was already there. It just found fertile ground to grow and prosper in. And so that's what I don't think feminism has its roots in the occult or non-Christian bastardized versions of itself. I think that the history of U.S. religion and its fraudulent religions, for lack of a better words, their cults, ended up becoming the perfect environment for which feminists, who women were already by lazy, not women, but men too, but as it pertains to feminine, women who are already egotistical, lazy, didn't want to work, and hey, look, I got a hoo-ha and people give me money for it. That is where, okay, a co-occurrence, a correlation but not causation begins. Like, for example, you would say, do liberal arts degrees cause stupid, lazy people? No, stupid, lazy people just excel in a liberal arts environment because it's not rigorous study. It never gives you any responsibility. It blames all your problems on other people. And it gives you this BS rationalization as to why you're entitled to enslave other people so you don't have to work for a living. It's not the school or the department or even the degree necessarily unto itself. It's that it attracts mentally lazy and stupid people. So they're correlated. They're very intertwined. They play off of each other, but it's not the cause. And so, but it was still very interesting. And that's why I think the book has merits, is reading up on the history. Like, man, these people were effed up. And not that they're not doing a great job of it now. Modern day feminists, like, just basically debunking their own stuff, as it is a hate movement. But you go through some of these people, they're notable people in this book. Like, my God, it's bright as day. They're just trying to avoid work. That's all. Look, I'll summarize all the politics for you. There's producers and the parasites. The producers want to be left alone so they can excel and control their own lives. The parasites are lazy and they don't want to. And they go, wah, 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 wah. The producers have more. Give me the money. That's it. That's all this is. And there, as I've said many times before, the main job of a parasite, Democrats, socialists, whatever, is to come up with the most fantastic of reasons and rationales as to why they're entitled to money. And the stuff that comes in there, and I do the audiobook, so here are my notes. The stuff they came up with, I was spoken to the goddess of the earth god, and she spoke to me, and I would transcendentalize, like, get the F out of here. It was all BS. Like, no, I'm surprised people in the olden times would even give these people an audience. What was it, W.C. Dickens and Red Dead Redemption? Like, how did those snake oil salesmen make it? Like, how did people even believe it? Clears cholera, syphilis, and other things. How did you fall for it? Well, people did. Anyway, so there's that. Talked about the wealthy benefactor. So basically, the merits of the book is in the documentation and the historical recording of what a lot of these women were like. I think, not Calendar, Spencer, Salinger, is that the one? One of the more noted ones I remember. She abandoned her family. She was a horrible person, just a horrible person. But they kind of feminists will glom over that one. And what it really boils down to, and I think the causes are more economic than anything, it's just your bored housewives. It's just your basic bitch bored housewives. It's, I'm bored. Life got too easy. You had the money, resources, or time to, like, well, I'm going to come up with astrology. I'm going to come up with tarot card reading, palm reading. Right, because you're bored. That's all it is. It's not complicated. It doesn't have to be a deep economic, philosophical, political analysis. You're just bored. You're not happy with your lot in life. You're not happy. You got your ego's too big. You gotta like lead the eugenics. Oh my God, there's stuff in here. Like, this is what egomaniacs do. Let me point out, like, you gave me $1 billion, you'll never see me again. I want nothing to do with society. I'm like, nope, I'm going to live my life. I don't want to bring out an occult. I don't want to start a group. I want to deal with you people. Not if you're a bored housewife. Not if you're an egomaniac. And this is why invariably these people all get divorced, cheat on someone else, mentally ill, suicide, early death, murder, not them getting murdered. I mean, they don't live happy lives because they're just trying to find happiness in made up BS. This just happens to have a hoo-ha attached to it. And so if you read through it, it's a lot of the same personality traits I talk about. People, they're lazy, they're egotistical, they want to avoid work at all costs. But unlike, I've always said, I appreciate the welfare collecting bum who just sits on the porch and chills out, as opposed to the thrice doctorated in stupid degrees Karen who has to lord, which is welfare, by the way. That's welfare. That's not real work. Who then is given a welfare job to act as a professor, who's going to lecture and lord the rest of us on how the world. That's who you got to look out for. That's who you got to look out for. That's your tyrants. And you could see those same personality traits going back hundreds of years ago. Hundreds. I mean, there was no lack of evidence of these gals being financed by a guy or a benefactor or a widow or something like that. But I wish she had documented more, like, well, especially in the earlier times, which maybe they didn't have the historical records for. It's like, wait, how did they start a cult? How did they start a cult like in 1820? Where did they get the money? I think there's like the Oneida Soap Company or Knife Company. There's some history there in New York. Like, wait a minute, where'd the money go? Inevitably it would run out wherever they got their money, but that must have been a pretty lofty thing. We're just going to strike out and do our own thing. Well, really, are you now? Yeah, we're just going to. And that was it. Another thing, I guess, is the arrogance to think that they knew better. That they knew better than millions of years of human evolution. Or if they didn't believe in evolution, the Bible, or if they decided that they just disagreed with what God said, but they're still going to believe in God. And I think God meant this, that I can have 40 wives. All it was a great documentary of how humans are eternally lazy and a lot are egotistical. And if you got a hoo-ha, half the population will do whatever you want. Okay, here's your money. I think one gal inherited in today's dollars like $300 million. And, it's happening today. Mackenzie Bezos, what he did, just like Bill Gates, all that charity's going to work, right? I'm sure that's going to work. Sure, it's going to work. Also, all finance, all corresponding with great economic growth. All finance. So that's about it. So the book is good. I would get it written. So you have a physical copy. So when they try and delete all the digital versions of this, you actually got a little bit of historical documentation. And this is a personal message to Rachel. Rachel, you need to fire your narrator. I took in the audiobook. The worst, most unprofessional recording I've ever seen. She didn't edit it, and you didn't audit it. Okay, look, let me explain something to you about narrators. Narrators are artists. Narrators never check their work. Narrators are lazy. Okay, narrators are emotional and they're artists. Okay, and they don't check their work, and they always send you flawed product. You didn't check your narrator's work. Literally, there's like 3 spots where she records and then stops and then records the same because she made a mistake the first time. But she didn't take out the mistake. There's another time I was like, God darn it. I'm like, oh, this is great. Also, I don't know how. Okay, just so you know, Rachel, they're going to take that down. Amazon will take that down because that will not meet their audio quality standards. It will, and you should take it down immediately now. Edit out the stuff yourself. Okay. I don't know how it got past the Amazon audio quality, or Audible, I guess it is, Audible quality people, because she didn't put in enough dead airspace between even the chapters. So shame on both of you. But fix that like ASAP, because it was horrible. She's an okay reader. I don't mean like her voice was bad or nothing, but yeah, that was pretty bad. That was pretty bad. All right, let's go through the super chats. Let's go through the super chats and have ourselves a treat. All right, 7-Step Survival. Please subscribe to his channel if you want to learn how to create a house that will survive the oncoming economic collapse. The only tuition I ever paid or I'm willing to pay for in my infrequent super chat contribution to the School of Cappy. Well, thank you very much. Although I think you're kind of doing well yourself, just living out in that house in Montana. He's doing good. Hopefully it didn't get flooded away. Robert Flores, $5. I always suspected that gay-oriented women were the driving force of feminism. I don't think that was it. I really don't think the lesbian movement did not move in until 50s, 60s. It was there in a backdrop, but that was a more recent addition in the grand schemes of the chronology that this book covers. These women would be living secret lifestyles in the pre-60 area. Right, they would be. And I'm not for that. I would like them to come out as well. Again, very libertarian, very pro not straight life, whatever you want to live. You should be treated as equals and not harassed or anything like that. But and the book did touch on it, but it was so recent in the grand scheme of the book, it wasn't delved into. But I would argue that the introduction of not straight women, fluid, whatever, however you define as a woman, that is more modernly traitism and victimhood politics than it has anything to do with feminism. But no, the driving force of feminism, it's kind of a cash grab. It's half cash grab. I'd say, look at me, I got this thing, give me money, and society will bend to that. It is also an existential ego masturbatory incentive. I think it's a religion that a lot of women want to have, to give them purpose and meaning and drive. I mean, think about, well, what did you do? I raised 3 kids and I are loving and da 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 da. What did you do? I fought the patriarchy and we established our rights. They think that well, it is more glamorous and sexy, literally, than just being the stay-at-home housewife and being a loving mother and a supporting wife. But when you're fighting nature and you're doing it because you're egotistically invested, not because you actually think, well, should I do this? Like I'd have a hard time joining the military now because I don't want to kill no Russians. Russians didn't do nothing to me. I don't want to kill Ukrainians either. But if I'm an egotist, I gotta go fight a cause. You'll grab any cause and start killing innocent people. Okay, you're despicable person. And so I think that's the other half is they just want something glorious. They want to be glorious. They want to fight the bad guy. This is why I feel real bad for Gen Z boys, where you guys have been nothing but the most obedient, kind, effeminate, feminist men the world has ever seen, except for maybe K-pop stars. And they still blame you. They still hate you. You're still part of the patriarchy. It's like, God, these guys didn't do anything. Oh, you're unconscious. It's institutional. It's part of your genetics. Like, wow. Well, because they got to have a villain. Because they're not going to and what's sad is you'd be happier. I mean, I can't prove it to you, but you'd probably be happier if you got a husband and had some kids and were a mother and a grandmother. And that's another thing you're going to find out is there's so many no names It's kind of like lawyers or OnlyFans, people like the top 1% of politicians. Everyone knows who Nancy Pelosi is. Everyone knows who's the one who didn't get elected, Hillary Clinton. You guys all know them, but for every one of them, there are literally 1,000 crusader types who are going to save the world and feminism and Democrats and socialism. Yay! That they just were the intern and they got coffee. And they'll die unknown. Yeah. But my next video I'm doing here next. In an hour, I got to go on with Elkins, so you guys might want to turn into the Elkins Accounting Hour. Starting in an hour. But yeah, I honestly, in the grand scheme of things, I think the lesbianism was merely a footnote in this book. Peyton paid $5. I found a dating profile that says believes in God and I'm pro-choice. Still have the screenshot. Yeah, they want the cake and eat it too. Hypocrisy. Thy name is woman. I'm terribly sorry, girls. Like, come on. I know you're not all like that. I got it. I know, but I just watched my video on male body positivity. I called men out on their BS and hypocrisy. Yeah, I guys, it just isn't your time. I'm not kidding, guys. Here, this is for you, and it's also for the women. Guys, get the menu. Life without the opposite sex. It's just not. You were born in the wrong generation. You're not going to get married. You're not going to find a woman. Ladies, you're not going to find a man that's going to make you happy. It's just not going to happen. So I think we all ought to go to our respective corners. Stop with the hate. Stop with the hate. We live our lives and we have good lives and we just kind of wave to each other as friendly neighbors with a nice big fence in between us. Big Kev, 95.39, $5. Occult feminism is BS. It's like claiming that you are an expert NFL analyst, but you don't know what a nickel defense is. I fail to see the analogy. Occult feminism? Well, I'll tell you this, all the occult stuff, all of it's okay. Look, first, okay, sit down. All religion is BS. Okay? But there is some authenticity to your established religions that have raised societies and empires and cultures and resulted in some serious and significant contributions to humanity. When you start getting these little variations and these branches of cults, that's just self-serving egomaniacs. And so when you get into things like crystal readings and tarot cards, and I mean, remember when a coven of witches were going to cast a curse on Donald Trump? That's BS. But being concerned is on the face of it of women's rights, it's not BS. But all of it, Wiccan and what is you? Oh man, if you could date a Wiccan girl, please do. They're fun in bed. They're really fun in bed, but they are not someone you want to get stuck together with. But I don't see. Yeah, I guess there's a hypocrisy if you've never played football, you're gonna be an analyst. Ice Snows, $2. Should we go to war or enjoy the decline? Oh no, enjoy. Well, who are we gonna go to war with? Who are we gonna go to war? Let me ask you this: of all your enemies in the world, who are your biggest enemies? They're probably domestic. Okay, so that'd be a civil war. Here's my question to you. Of your most hated enemies, is there anything you could do to them that would make their lives worse? What could you do to them possibly to make them more miserable? I don't think there's anything you could do. Matter of fact, the worst thing you could do is leave them be. And I've evaluated this and thought about it. Welfare may be the biggest revenge we get on the parasites of society. You say, well, how's that? I'm the one paying. I'm just like, yeah, but you see what it does to these people? Do you see how it just ruins their lives? It enables them to be homeless, enables them to be parasites for their entire, they will never grow out of that. And they will forever be mentally tortured because somebody else has more than them. It's like, well, that's because they work. Like, imagine that. What's that like? What's that like being a perpetually pissed off feminist thinking you're always oppressed? how think of this. You got 50 grand. You got an enemy. What would be the worst thing you could do to her or him? I'll lend you the $50,000 if you major in journalism, women's studies, sociology. Yeah, here, go get it. Go do it. You could just give them the money and they go major in that. They waste at least 20 years wandering in the desert trying to make that degree work. You destroyed them. So in the meantime, what have the Chinese people done to me? What have the Russian people done to me? So far, actually, except for maybe Iran and some Saudis, 20 years back, the world's been kind of nice to me. I'm trying to think, there's got to be a group of people that hate me somewhere, or us. I don't really see. Our enemies are not foreign. Be strong, $2. We'd be better off to pay HR and SJW to stay home, or I would. You're saying not have them in the first place? No, refuse to work for a company that has that. It's going to be the 1099 superior race, guys. Just don't really, for all you out there, like you go in, oh, we're going to have the interview with HR. No, you won't. No, I don't do HR. No, that's fine. Look, no, because then there's going to be diversity and inclusion training, right? No, that's all right. My hourly rate is $300 an hour when you need your IT stuff fixed because you hired whoever out of the diversity department to be your IT guy or gal, and he or she doesn't know anything, but you got your and you've been doing all the diversity training, so they couldn't work on it. So now you need to outsource it. I'm at $300 an hour. Contact me then. You just don't play. Hey, do you want to play on this baseball diamond that's totally biased against you? No. Erica Williams, Classy Climb. Please check her out. $2. Have a book being turned into an audiobook right now. Double check every chapter, Erica. And when you find out that the narrator, because they're artists and artists are flaky and not professional, say, here's your timestamps, fix it. And then guess what you get to do? You get to listen again. This is why I don't pay narrators that much or refuse to pay them that much. It's like, no, because you're going to make mistakes and you're not going to fix them. I got to audit. I got books sometimes are like 6 hours long. I got to listen to them 3 times. Oh, $3, $6, $1,800. Okay. I normally would pay you $4 or $5 grand, but you're only going to get 2. Erica's Classic Climb again, $5. I know 3 women and 4 men in their 40s getting master's degree right now, out of pocket. They need a cause and a mission. Folks need a mission without a family. Yeah, or religion. I would just go hiking. I would go work for the cops. I'd go volunteer. I'd do anything but go back to school. I would never go back to school. Why? What are they going to teach you that I can't learn on the internet for free and better and more direct? I'm sorry. Hey, do they want to go to Cappy's Fat Camp with Commandant Cappy? They got for half the price of the master's degrees. I'll take them up some hills and we'll move lots of rocks. Lots of rocks. Is that it? I think we're all caught up. Are we all caught up? We are. All right, there you guys go. So take a look at it. It's linked down below. I'll be on with Elkins later. We'll see you guys later. Toodles.